Welcome to Queued Up with Ziz and Pam. We are so excited to have our special guest, Tim Salau, with us today. I'm going to tell you about his background. So Tim's life purpose, his why, is to strengthen the bonds people share through compassionate action. Tim, Mr. Future of Work, Salau, is the CEO and co-founder of Guide, the premier B2B learning and talent development SaaS app, helping remote teams and 1B knowledge workers learn anytime, anywhere, on demand. He is an author, investor, accomplished international keynote speaker, product leader, tech influencer, and the only Nigerian African-American activist and global authority leading and shaping the discussion on the future of work, leadership, and innovation. Welcome, Tim.
It's an honor, Pam, and Ziz. I am so thankful to be here and so happy we're finally making this happen.
Yes. No, we are so excited as well. I was particularly interested in your Mr. Future of Work. So this caught my eye, and I write blogs about the future of work and preparing our kids. So tell me, the future of work, are we there yet? And we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
What is the future of work, and how do we get there?
Pam, and Pam, Ziz, I always feel as if we talk about the future of work a lot, right? And you, Pam, you mentioned you've shared about it a lot. And I think it's constantly being molded and shaped. Often whenever I start calling myself the Mr. Future of Work, it was just it came from a place of, I'm purely passionate about the space as a practitioner, as well as a thought leader. And I think often people think we've arrived, but if you ask anyone that's currently living our current reality of how we're working, how we're learning, people hate this. People hate the fact that the only way you meet people nowadays is through Zoom, although it's economically sufficient and it's convenient, but people don't like working like that. People miss the community. People miss actually going into work. They miss all of the parts of work that make you human. So it kind of leads you to believe, well, if people don't love this reality in the extreme that we're currently in, then what's the in-between? Like, what's the future that they will love and that will actually give people meaning in their work? So I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a long ways to go, but we're thankful with Guide that we're actively shaping it.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, it's very interesting. As we mentioned in previous conversations that led up to this actual interview, and a lot of parents want to know, what advice would you give to a high school student? So this is a two-part question. So what advice would you give to a high school student, and what is the role of colleges or universities overall?
No, I think that's a powerful question. My greatest advice that I would give to a high school student right now is do not be afraid to put yourself out there in this current time. Like, I think that high school, I've been in high school. We've all been in high school, right? I remember when I was in high school, and I feel as if I wish I was the mentor that I am to myself. That I wish I was that person in high school, because the reality is that everything a high schooler needs to develop the career that they want, they can do it in high school. Yeah. You don't have to wait until you even get to college nowadays. And you don't even have to wait until you get into corporate America. You can literally build your business with your parents' permission, of course, in high school and get things started, because there's so much access to the information, the tools, and even the mentorship online nowadays. And my biggest advice to high schoolers is that don't take this opportunity in your youth for granted. Because I think to a degree, I took it for granted in high school because I didn't have the mentorship, but high school students have it nowadays. And I think more importantly, to the second part of your questions is, I feel as if the role that colleges and universities play right now is that they need to stop acting as if they are the premier solution for education. Because the reality is that they are not anymore. And they offer value in the sense of the experience of college. I believe is really important because you get to build relationships, you get to build a network. Professors can act as your mentors and kind of a guiding light for you. But you have to also think about what the consumer experience is for actual, early career college students, right? Like, do you think it's fair for them to be paying $50,000 in tuition, but that isn't actually leading to a long-term career path and trust in their education, the credibility of what they have? I don't think that's fair personally as a consumer and as a business person. So I think colleges have to work a lot with private sector leaders and businesses to see, okay, how do we create new models that actually value the customer, which is in this case, the student?
Yeah, I think I have 3 college students, 2 in college, 1 grad school, and I tried to talk 2 of them out. One has to, she's a speech pathologist, she needs a degree. And the other 2, one's an artist and one's interested in advertising. And I'm like, stop. And matter of fact, this COVID gave us the opportunity. We said, if your colleges are going online, you're not going back. You're taking a gap year. Now what do you do? Right? And they've actually discovered, one is having to take a gap year because they went online. And now it's build a life. And I'm kind of looking at this as an opportunity. And so, and the whole mentor up thing, how do you inspire people to become mentors at a business level, at a community level, even parents? I mean, instead of looking at our kids, looking at all our kids in our community and our responsibility to them as well, not just making sure Johnny's getting through the system.
Yeah. I think for me personally, as a leader, and that's building one of the hottest businesses in the world right now, and Guide, we as leaders, I think, have a responsibility in paying it forward and giving back. Even me as a African American Black man, I'm privileged in a sense of I've had the privilege of working with the Microsofts, working with the Facebooks, and working with the LinkedIns, and we're actually working in tech for so long. So I'm often, me, Pam, I'm sharing every single day, just putting content out there because, that it's reaching somebody and someone is learning from it. And I'm hoping it's inspiring someone to aspire to build something that they're passionate about. And I think a lot of leaders in business need to take that responsibility, but also a lot of leaders in education need to take that responsibility, because the way that education is moving is that even if you're an educator, if you're a teacher, you're only the only medium for you isn't just educating in a physical space anymore. Like, you can create courses on Thinkific. You can, be a part of our creator community and Guide and create bite-sized courses, right? You can almost start your own academy, right? So like, you can go above and beyond in being a mentor and actually getting that knowledge and building that community. So I think it's a personal responsibility that we have to take in terms of mentoring up. And I think from a student perspective, Pam, is this, I think that our students, we actually need to help them cultivate learning communities, not only be learners, right? Because I think one of the things that you have probably touched on in your past episodes is that the community component to learning is just as crucial as the self-directed motivation.
Yes.
It's so interesting in what you're talking about, because at the middle of it all is relationships.
Yeah.
That's the intersection, and that might be the rub with a lot of different people. So here we have 2 men of color. Now, and I like to refer to myself sometimes, Tim, as I'm the permanent tan guy.
I love that, man.
Because I like, for me, it's not that I haven't faced racism or seen racism. Of course I have.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, that's how you feel. I now know how you feel. Yeah. And I go on with my day, because there's so many other people who are the opposite color of me or the opposite gender of me who are supportive. And we have someone like Pam. I mean, we started this collaborative project. She's on the opposite side of the coast. So it proves that it can happen. So learning communities, building networks, really, I think at the intersection of it all is, how do we help students build those networks? And maybe LinkedIn isn't the tool for them, even though they do cater to that age group, but maybe we need to start something else.
Yeah. I think we see Guide being a tool for them. And, we're already working with institutions who want to integrate Guide, who want to use us. And I think to your points is that's the power, right? In you and Pam's story is that there's this opportunity where I don't think we actually talk about this enough in the broader conversation in terms of how education is changing, of how if you give someone the right relationships early on in their career, whether in high school or in college, and they come from a circumstance of low income, inequality, they face microaggressions their entire life. But if they truly just had that 2-3 people who are practitioners, right, and who can be kind of guiding lights, right, and mentors every other month they meet, or every 3 months, that can actually create a world of difference that we like, that people that can go a long way. And I think that's one of the conversations I love having when it comes to even at a higher level. And I wish we actually have more of, in terms of the political conversation around how we reform our education system.
Yeah.
Because often we're making the solution seem as if, oh, let's funnel in more money. Let's do a lot of that. Let's try to get more money to the teachers and all of that. But it's really, how about we change policies to be more community driven? How about we think about how do we embrace at a local level, more collaboration between small to medium businesses and local high schools? How do we give that opportunity for maybe even high schoolers to think about their gap year? You know what I'm saying? Like, these are different types of conversations that we are not having at a higher level.
Well, it doesn't belong at a higher level because
Yeah.
it's not a top down. The issue is actually the system institutional framework itself, which has to focus on output. They give money, they need accountability, right? Whether it's a corporation with shareholder return, whether it's a school system with graduation rates and test scores. So given that, and I write a lot about the movement, this huge shift in ownership on the part of parents, educators, businesses who are deciding that it's their responsibility to change the system by building these new systems. And because of the platforms that are out there, we're completely changing it. I am doing a think if it, I can't pronounce that.
Yeah, you pronounced it right.
Course on meaning and Viktor Frankl. And it's like, how easy is this? You can create anything that can be shown and have access. And this is, 7 years ago, we couldn't have done this, but today we can. So really thinking going forward. So in terms of the education system and in terms of getting people to mentor up, what do you think of, one of the places I was working with was actually a Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
Was trying to get the Chamber of Commerce to not just the high school partner with, because there's homeschoolers, there's unschoolers, there's all these different kinds of charter schools. So these communities have learners that don't have access or special access or whatever to mentor up with job fairs, to do it, whether it's a job shadowing, okay. And Big Picture Learning has an app for this. I Am Blaze, where they begin to connect businesses and mentorship. It's exciting to see what's happening. There's a lot of change, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, I think that we're going to continue seeing this change. I'm so optimistic, y'all, because because I think for the last few decades, education couldn't change because there wasn't this kind of spotlight moment that we're having right now around many systems, our social justice system, our education system, our healthcare system. And I think even, COVID-19 has been a huge bummer for the world, but this optimism and these conversations that it's actually carrying forth keeps me optimistic because, for us, we're being a part of the change and what we're building, but I think it's causing even people at a local level to be fed up. And more importantly, to see like the visibility, like, oh, there's actual solutions out here, whether with the technology or even people who want to do better, who want to create a movement around where should education be going. And for us, we're just grateful to be a part of that movement.
Well, with that being said, so talk a little bit more about the activist piece. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, personally, this and Pam, I'm an activist. I an activist and a practitioner. So I think for us, Building Guide, we see the future of learning and education. It should be accessible. It should be affordable. So actual educators can actually buy Guide for their students at $120 a year. $120 a year, and that will give them access to quality content from our amazing, credible creators that we're curating within our community. But also, we've seen great interest in universities and high schools using Guide as a customized, integrated solution within their own, high school or university system. So, we've been building this platform to be a flexible and affordable solution for universities, but really at an individual level, learners. Right. So you may not have a job, but if you can find mom and dad's credit card and they give you permission, you can actually buy Guide and be a part and form a learning community with our amazing, credible creators. So for me as an activist, I feel as if it's my job every single day to be the change that I want to see. So often, I'm creating content to be and derive value for our community. But also, I think right now with the times that we're living in, I don't actually see a disconnect between me working as a technology leader, but also being a fundamental humanitarian, right? And we have been for too long are seeing policies in education as well as in the social justice system that are inhumane and actually don't reflect the multicultural and global world that we live in. So for me, I'm actively always sharing my thoughts on that. And I think the reality is that there's a lot of people who feel the same way. And I think right now, education is a bipartisan issue. Everyone deserves access to quality education. And for me as an activist, I just think it's my job, it's my role as a leader to talk about that and, you know, just be a part of the movement with the people.
But I think that's exactly what we're talking about in
Yeah.
terms of role modeling. Like, you can't make somebody do something,
Yep.
but you can inspire that change. And by giving people somebody to look up to who has done it, who is willing to turn around and help the next person up, because that's
Yeah.
really what it is for those of us. And we are all have privilege. I mean, Ziz was in the NFL, you know.
Ziz, you were in NFL, my brother?
He was an NFL player, yeah. So he knows. So we talked
That's
about
amazing.
racism. Yeah. So
How did that change your views over time, man?
Well, it was a great opportunity, but the one thing that was clear to me, very, very clear. So in college, I actually ruptured an Achilles tendon.
Wow.
So I went from being what I would call really fast to pedestrian slow. Of course, I wasn't as slow as I'm saying I was, but let's just say the impact of my Achilles injury was some serious money, you know. So, but overall, my idea and the way that I was raised was my identity wasn't in athletics. My identity was in learning, and that was my value. So my core values were, you know, this was something I was good at. I liked it, but it wasn't something I was going to do the rest of my life. If, you know, when you think about it, especially in football, the average career, I think it's under 3 years. So let's just say someone has a great career. You know, they're 27 years old. What are you going to do the rest of your life? And there's nothing wrong with that, thinking about that. But what happens is that transition, especially for athletes, it's painful for a lot of them because they go into depression. They don't have that community. They don't have that community of athletes. You know, sports teaches you so many things, but one of the things is it's tough to transition. So I love the book, Transitions by Bridges. He talks about there's a beginning, there's a middle.
I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, for all of us, I mean, at some point our career will end or we have to shift. And so many of us have had to reinvent ourselves with COVID, with the gig economy. I mean, that is something we aren't talking enough about. These students think they're going to graduate from college and have a job for the next 15, 20 years.
That's not true anymore.
Exactly. But, you know, Tim, so how many people are talking about it? Pam and I, we've talked about it on our episodes in the past. I know you are.
Yeah.
But parents seem to be tone deaf.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's troubling too. I think that's often the hardest part about education reform is actually getting buy-in from parents who aren't seeing the times or living in the times that we're actually living in now. And I think that's where, Pam, to, you know, our point we were talking about earlier, role modeling, it's like, how are we bringing people who are actual practitioners, who are activists and leading, you know, maybe changes through their vantage point, and actually bring and kind of like, you have to create you have to foster this ecosystem where parents, high schools, and also like private sector are aligned and are seeing, you know, the perspective of each other. So I actually think that's really important. And what troubles me and what concerns me is that I told my parents that I'm building the business, y'all. Like, because I'm still very early in my career. I told them I'm building a world-changing business. We're a lot of people are interested. We have advisors. We're doing this. And believe it or not, I was talking to my mom a few weeks ago. She calls me. We're talking. And she's like, "Are you going to go work for somebody again?" I'm like, "No, I'm building a business. It's working." Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're scaling. It's doing. We have a strong community. But for her, she hasn't lived in a future or present where you didn't work to earn money. Like, as in, you didn't have to work for someone else to earn money. Like, it's always been like, oh, well, you find a job, you get educated, you go through this pipeline exercise. So where me as her son, oh, you're completely doing something that I didn't have to do because you understand how things are moving now. And I have to educate her And this is, and Pam, this is me, someone that's always educating other people. I have to educate my own family around this. And I only imagine what high schoolers having to go through who have parents that don't understand. So I think we have to be empathetic, one, but also parents have to be open-minded too.
Well, because of what it's doing to our kids in terms of mental health and wellness, by having them adhere to fit in to a standard that, number one, is not going to prepare them for life, because it's taking too much of their time sitting there just absorbing content, and somehow that's going to make them a worthy individual. No. And the other thing is that we operate in silos. You know, we have our school silo, our work silo. You know, what's actually good about COVID, I mean, again, there's many things that we are all sad about with regard to it. But on the other hand, we've had to build the infrastructure in our communities of next door. I mean, suddenly it's like, oh, people are telling me, I've never known my neighbor. I suddenly know my neighbor. I suddenly want to know my neighbor. I have to know my neighbor. And so the infrastructure, breaking down these silos and create the human infrastructure that we've been losing, or that we lost, of the old town square where people saw each other and things like that. So it's pretty exciting on that front that we're beginning to build it. And I, of course, see so much change in education that I'm super excited. The new micro schools where people are like, okay, let's get 10 kids together. We either do it, where this year guide program would be perfect for something like that. And because let's stay safe, they're not going to go to school. You could hire a teacher. Somebody was saying, if we gave every teacher the average of what the government gives per student, 15,000, they would make 150,000 for 10 kids.
Wow.
Right? How does that change, right? Then what happens? That would make across the, even if you only gave them 10,000 a kid, across the board, inner cities, whatever, everybody's getting the same. It doesn't matter your real estate values. Because right now, whether you get the money depends on your real estate values, but the issue isn't money. It's outmoded content. It's outmoded teaching style. We don't need the sage on the stage. We need the guide on the side. So what, guide on the side, literally.
Guide on the side. That's why we're guide.
Yeah. That's Esther Rodsicki, actually,
Wow.
who, that's her quote. Yeah.
Wow. No, I love that, Pam. And we're moving towards that future. I'm very confident that we're moving towards that future. In fact, you know, for us, you know, Pam, I think you've been following us for quite some time. We were initially a life skills training app, but we realized, you know what, if we want to change the system, we actually have to operate outside of the system. And that is true because of the way education is in terms of its market. It's really hard for you to be able to offer something different that people that one scales, but also offer something different that people don't understand because the system is so broken and homogenous. So yeah, no. And so we realized, we learned, and we were like, well, there's still ways for us to change the system, but from a different standpoint, it allows us to be a profitable business, but also allows us to really build that community. And, you know, we haven't stopped since. So Pam, I'm just happy that you and Ziz are building this movement, because I think that right now is the right time for it. And I can only imagine where it's going to be in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's actually the beauty of what you just said, and the example of your mom. Your own mom is asking you because she doesn't understand like what's changing. And literally earlier today, I was working with some summer school students, and a young lady asked a question. She goes, my parents aren't listening to me. How do I explain something to them? And I said, you have to be empathetic. You have to give them a little bit of grace because they were in school some years ago and they don't understand. And then I just said, parents, that shift is hard for them because they're used to being, do it my way. I am the boss. And it doesn't work that doesn't work anymore with this generation. I mean, this generation is so amazing to me. They're interesting in a lot of different fronts. So, you know, I'm curious. So you mentioned hopeful. So who are your guides?
Man, you know, I love that question because my guides are, you know, our advisory board are people that we love. So there's just one guy that really changed my life, one leader that really, really changed my life early on in my career. His name is Robin Daniels. And Robin is someone after I left my first job with Microsoft, I actually pitched Robin through LinkedIn. And I told him, hey, I would love to work with you at WeWork, because at that time he had left LinkedIn to work with WeWork. And Robin, was nice enough to, find time, have a conversation with me. And then over the course of 3 months, I interviewed for the role at WeWork. And, my experience working with him at WeWork was life-changing because that was the first time I saw what great leadership looked like at a corporate level, right? In terms of great leadership, great charisma, how do you build a team? And, I loved working with him so much. I was like, hey, I want to make you a part of our advisory board as we build our company. And for me, that's the example of what leadership should look like, especially for early career students who just leave college and are looking to go work in corporate America. Corporate America can be a very, very brutal place for high schoolers, early career, college students who don't know what they want to do and don't have that meaning in their life.
Yep.
And I think it's very important that we actually, because Pam, I know you talk a lot about this, actually start talking a lot more about meaning in education, because that really is what's going to sustain anyone's career. Are you passionate about the work that you're doing? Is it meaningful? And does it allow you to sustain and live? But if people are doing work that's not meaningful, you're actually just going to continue to see churn within the current workforce. And you're going to see, a lot of emotional and psychological trauma as well, like over time. So I actually think that's another conversation.
It is, and we're already seeing it. So we have the anxiety and the depression in schools. You go into the next system, you bring it along with you. So like something like 84% of people who are working in jobs are dissatisfied and unhappy in their job. They go home, they got to just release it somewhere. It's what Viktor Frankl called the existential vacuum.
Wow.
When you don't have meaning, you have a void and emptiness you fill with aggression, depression, or addiction. Because you've got to somehow figure this out. You're not allowed to learn to be your own guide, right? And a part of the guide is to listen to your conscience, but we don't teach them that. We teach them to comply and conform, to be answerable to someone telling them what to do. Well, they go into this world that's changing so fast, and it's really, really, really hard. So, and then we have the parents who are well-meaning, but well-meaning is the opposite of meaning. Because they really, that was Alex Vesely, Viktor Frankl's grandson, said that. He said, well-meaning is the opposite of meaning because it's directed by someone external from you, and meaning can only be found inside. And so how do you see Guide going forward in helping people with their purpose and the discovery of meaning?
That's a powerful question, Pam. And what I love so much about that question is that when we think about our brand and the movement that we're creating with Guide, it's rooted around the people who are creators and the educators within our community who are creating this content and who aren't building their learning communities just because, to brag about it, but because they love and they're passionate about educating. And I think one of the things that we often don't talk about is that teaching is the highest form of service. Like the people who educate and serve and try to nurture the minds of young people or the next generation, like there's a lot of service and compassion in that. And that's why I love educating, because for me, it's like, it's coming from a place of service. And when you are able to teach something to a point where someone else understands it, that means you really love what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It means something to you. And, when we think about our brand, we really love building our brand around the people who love our platform and love our movement. And I think for us, that's how we try to, role model around our brand and try to showcase that, you can be a creator as well. Because it's not a matter of just being a consumer as a student, because the world isn't built by consumers. The world is built by creators. The people who change the world are creators, right? Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Benioff, right? Pam and Ziz, like they're people who create. Like those are the people that change the world. And I think that's what we aspire to do, to highlight the creators, the people who are actually moving and shaking it and shaking things up in the world.
Well, tell our listeners where they can find you on the various social media platforms and maybe your favorite social media platform. We will absolutely share that information with our listeners. So what's the best place to follow you?
So I'm active everywhere. But I will say I've been loving Twitter more recently these days, but they can connect with me actually on LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my favorite platform because of the professionalism and the quality content on there. And I love sharing and actually engaging with people in my DMs as well. And I do a daily on the weekdays, a daily live stream highlighting some of the amazing people who are part of our community and we think are role models that people can learn from. And, you know, so LinkedIn is like my go-to, but Pam also knows that there's also a community that we encourage parents to get involved in called our Mentors and Mentees community, where they can involve their children or they can learn from us and other people who are professionals and practitioners on how they can mentor their students, on also, you know, what roles or different positions that their students can aspire to be in terms of when they get into corporate America. And I'm often streaming into that community as well, so we can provide valuable content for our community.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
Such a
Pam, thank
pleasure.
you. Ziz, thank you for inviting me. I am honored to be on Queued Up and be part of your movement.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, we so appreciate it. And the energy, and it's just infectious. I just want to go out and make some changes with some people. So everyone, thank you so much for listening. You've just heard an unbelievable, powerful conversation with our special guest, Tim Salau, who is the founder, and I'm going to refer to him as the activist, the Nigerian African-American activist. That to me, I need to have a separate conversation with you just about
we
that
should,
alone.
brother. We should. We should. Let's do it, man.
Yeah, but at any point, I hope that you all will definitely follow Tim on LinkedIn, and you also check us out on the various platforms that we share our information on Queued Up, where we talk about powerful conversations where it means to be educated in the 21st century. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.